The April meeting. I will call the Steamship Authority Board's April meeting to order. I would like to inform everyone that Falmouth Community Television, also known as FCTV, and Sean Driscoll, the authority's communications director, are making audio and video recordings of today's meeting. If anyone else is making an audio and video recording of today's meeting, please identify yourself by pressing the raise your hand icon on the Zoom dashboard, or if you are joining by telephone, by pressing *9 on your keypad. And when you are recognized, please state your name for the record. Thank you. Louisa?
Louisa Hufstadter with the Vineyard Gazette Media Group.
Thank you. Jason?
Good morning, everyone. Jason Graziadei, Nantucket Current.
Thank you. Hi.
Kai Quigley, the Inquirer and Mayor.
Thank you. Unki?
Unki Sonu, MB Times.
Thank you. And Devin?
Devin Aquinnah, Falmouth Enterprise.
Thank you. That's all I got. Pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, as amendment, board members Jim Malkin and Maura Tierney are participating remotely in today's meeting because their physical attendance today would be unreasonably difficult. Board members Jim Malkin and Maura Tierney are participating in the meeting by the Zoom video conferencing app, and all members will be clearly audible to each other. As a result of these members' remote participation in this meeting, any and all votes taken by the members today shall be by roll call vote. And present for the board is Bob Jones, Rob Rainey, and Peter Jeffrey at the Steamship Authority Administrative Offices today. I guess our first order of business is the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 2025 meeting and public session? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Approved and seconded. If we could take a roll call vote.
Jones, aye.
Randy, aye.
Tierney, aye.
Malkin, aye.
Jeffrey, aye. They pass unanimously. We'll move to the general manager's report.
Or the Port Council.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Port Council report.
I believe Mr. Lowell.
There we go. Thank you all. So yes, we had a good meeting on the first. So Mr. Munson provided us with the status of the Aquinnah, and it's essentially complete except for the testing and sea trials, although he'll have probably an update today, obviously. And he gave us the update on the Monomoy, and the milestones include the installation of the sponsons, the stern ramp, and the final weld out of the bow and stern sections. Zach Lawrence provided an update on the recent dry dock of the INO and at the Fairhaven shipyard, and all the work that was done to it, including that water jet issue, which is really good, in the new engine number 3 replacement. Mr. Munson provided an update on the recent dry dock of the Woods Hole at the same shipyard. And then Mr. Davis presented an update on the Woods Hole Terminal project. Recent work includes the removal of the wall forms of the terminal building and the preparation for the installation of the glulam roof. And then he presented an update on the request for responses for the reservation system. And then Mr. Munson and Paul Hennessy and Mr. Davis presented an update on the MV Barnstable's performance. And that was a good conversation. And then Allison Fletcher provided us with the Blue Line usage situation on the Woods Hole, Martha's Vineyard route. And Then she presented us with the preliminary draft of the 2026 operating schedules. And Mr. Driscoll gave us the I&O pre-sale ticket numbers for the just before the boat comes back online. We have a 2-week sale. And then Mr. Rosen presented the business summary for February and the financial statements. If anyone has any questions, thank you very much.
Any questions for the Port Council? Seeing none, thank you, Nat.
Thank you guys very much. Take care.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, I see that the representatives from RSM are on the meeting, and would the board consider taking them out of order?
Yes, we can take them out of order.
Good morning, Valerie and Melissa.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we have one more that needs to join. Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Perfect. I think we have our team here. Do we also have the ability to share our presentation?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Wonderful. Melissa, can you go ahead and do that? Or... Okay. Madison, thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Can you just get us to the executive summary? So thank you again. My name is Valerie Coleman. I am the audit partner on the engagement for the fiscal 2024 audit. With me, I have my team, Madison Palin, as she was the manager, as well as Melissa as our senior in the engagement. We're really happy here today to present to you the results of the 2024 audit, and we'll just kick it off to just give you an audit status. So the 2024 audit is complete. We issued an unmodified opinion, which essentially means a clean opinion, on March 28th of 2025 on each of the funds, the major funds, and the fiduciary activities. There were no significant changes to the plan, audit strategy, and communication to the authority board members in our report date of February 6th. So essentially back then in February, we listed out in a letter format what we would be doing, and what we completed and noted in that letter is what we executed. In 2024, the authority did adopt a couple standards. There were two. One is the accounting changes and error corrections, and 101, which is the compensated absences. And then we did note some uncorrected misstatements that we'll go through in our further slides in slide 18 and 19 throughout the presentation. There is one significant deficiency related to information technology observations that we will also communicate during this meeting. Slide. A few matters to bring to your attention. Again, our responsibilities was outlined in our engagement letter that was dated December 3rd of 2024. And our plan, scope, and timing of the audit was also again issued on February 6th. So here's a few things in terms of the accounting policies and practices. So preferability of accounting policies and practices. Under the accounting policies, should there have been any sort of preferability or alternative accounting practices in certain circumstances that the authority can deploy, we'd be required to let you know. There was no such circumstances that were noted. As I noted earlier, there were 2 standards that were adopted, 101 and 100. And also the significant accounting policies. We did not identify any significant accounting policies that were controversial or emerging. So everything was pretty normal for the organization. And significant unusual transactions, again, we did not identify anything significant or unusual transactions. I am going to pass it over to Madison. So one of the things that we want to bring to your attention is what we identify as significant accounting estimates. Essentially for us, these are these areas that we sort of hone in on because this is where management has the ability to exude any sort of judgment. So we ensure that they're pretty consistent year over year, and there's just nothing that transpired that would require us to think something or the assumptions were not utilized in the proper manner. So Madison will go over some of the accounting estimates that we had identified.
Hello. Yeah, to start off with the non-union pension liabilities. This liability fluctuates, year to year based on the actuarial data and significant assumptions used, and management does obtain the valuation for this estimate directly from principal. There was nothing in our review that differed from management's estimate. Oh, I think I may have skipped one. Yep. The OPEB liabilities, the other post-employment benefit liabilities, same as the pension. This liability fluctuates year to year. Management does obtain this valuation directly from KMS actuaries. There was nothing in our review that differed from management's estimate for this as well. Plan investments are reported at fair value for the pension assets, and the estimates are obtained from Principal Financial Group as well. And there was nothing in our review that differed from this estimate either. Allowance for penalty revenue. This allowance is estimated as 5% of the monthly penalty revenue. And there was nothing that we identified that differed from management's estimate here. Grants receivable allowance. There is no allowance for grants receivable, and this estimate is based on the understanding and nature of the grants and agreements that you guys have. There was nothing that we identified that differed from management's estimate here. Capital asset useful lives. So depreciation is calculated using the straight line method over these estimated useful lives, and these are all in the depreciation policy that is gone over every year. There was nothing that we identified that differed from this estimate either. Accrued payroll. We have a couple different things in this estimate this year. There is the short-term versus long-term accrued compensation. And this year it was calculated using a historical ratio of leave taken. In the prior year, it was all just in short term. And additionally, there was retro payroll this year, and that was estimated during the year using a 10% pay increase for the union contracts that were not yet settled at year end. For both of these, there is nothing in our review that differed from management's estimate. Self-insurance health claims accrual. This is estimated by weighting the most current 3 years actual claims. And there was nothing in our review that differed from management's estimate. Incremental borrowing rate. This is established by utilizing the prime borrowing rates. Oh, so sorry. Published by the Federal Reserve. And there was nothing in our review that differed from this estimate either.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Madison. And again, these are areas that we sort of hone in because this is where management can exude a lot of judgment. So we just want to ensure that there's nothing that changes from their assumptions year over year that needs to be reported to the board or anything of that nature. And as Madison alluded to with all of those, we did not find anything that was differing in terms of how management applies these estimates. We do want to let you know that when you looked at your audit opinion this year, it was slightly different because we had to adopt a 101, which is the compensated absence. And because of that, we had an emphasis of matter. So this is just pointing out what the emphasis of matter stated, how we had to restate the prior fiscal year, but there was nothing in terms of an issue. This is just really how you adopt the accounting pronouncement, and that we acknowledge that, and to point the reader to note 12 so that they can see the effect of that accounting pronouncement. Additional matters that you would see within the report, as well as some other information. So this report has a lot of required supplementary information. So we call that out within this particular footnote within the opinion, and to letting the reader understand what those required supplemental information are. Those required supplementary information are not provided in audit opinion. We do have certain requirements that we have to do, that we have to read the supplementary information, ensure it's consistent with the areas that we do provide an audit opinion on. And again, because there's limited procedures, we don't provide any sort of opinion on it, but we state what we've done. And then again, since you are a governmental authority, we do have to complete our engagement under government auditing standards, which is what that final paragraph indicates that it's been completed under. Now, throughout the audit, there are areas that we can note that provide either audit adjustments or uncorrected misstatements. So we do want to say that there were no audit adjustments made to the original trial balance. Essentially, what that means is when we walked in, we were provided a trial balance of the financial reports. That is exactly what is noted within your final reporting package. Nothing came that required us to state that they needed to make an adjustment relating to that. Uncorrected misstatements were identified. So this is essentially areas that we noted that we felt that we have established a certain threshold that requires us to pass on putting this adjustment within your financial reporting package. And because of the nature and the qualitative and quantitative aspect of these entries, they don't mislead a reader whatsoever. So we're going to go through these uncorrected misstatements so you have a full understanding. Melissa?
Hello, everyone. So we're going to start with the business type activities of the authority. So we had 9 uncorrected misstatements or past adjustments for these types of activities. These adjustments relate to 5 issues that we found, and 2 of them relate to prior period uncorrected misstatements. So we'll just go through them quickly. So the first one is a cutoff error related to expenses. These are expenses recorded in the improper period. So we had a factual misstatement here of around $6,000. And then entry number 5 on the list is the projected related misstatement of $530,000. The second entry relates to contribution catch-up payments on the pension plan in the amount of $240,000. Our third entry also relates to a factual error identified within expenses related to cutoff expenses in the wrong period. So we had around a $6,000 factual misstatement there. And then our entry number 6 is the projected error related to this, which is $194,000. So entry number 4 relates to passenger revenue, which was incorrectly recorded as revenue in the current year. So we moved it over to unearned revenue. Number 5 and 6, we already talked about. These are the projected errors related to those expense cutoff factual errors. 6 and 7 are the prior period reversals. So these are issues that we found last year, and we're just reversing the effect of those for this year. Those were also cutoff related issues with expenses and accounts payable. And then our 9th entry is related to an estimate. The authority's allowance for past reservations we found to be overstated this year, so this entry decreases that. And that issue actually was identified by management as well, and they have corrected it. But given the nature of the estimate, it'll take a couple of years for that effect to be seen.
And I just want to interject and kind of indicate when we say factual versus projected, we do statistically sample. If we were here looking at every single invoice, we'd never be gone and we'd never have a way to close out the reporting period. So whenever we statistically sample and find an error, we do have to project that for the remainder population that we did not necessarily looked at. So again, the cumulative effect of all of this is shy of 300,000, just under it. So because of the dollar value of it, all of this is able to be passed on. We don't need to necessarily book this within the financial reporting system fully because, again, it's not misleading or anything of that nature. We have thresholds that we can lead on. So just wanted to interject and indicate that overall.
Yeah, thanks, Valerie.
Mhm.
So then to move on to the fiduciary funds, which is the non-union pension. So this relates back to entry number 2 on the business type activities. This is the factual contribution catch-up related for $240,000. So because this does relate to non-union pension, it also hits the fiduciary fund activity, and we have a past adjustment here as well.
Perfect, thank you. And then we are going to kind of jump through, I don't know if we can get there, Madison, to the significant deficiency that was identified. So throughout the whole process, we do utilize our IT group to assist us in ensuring that we are able to rely on the reportings that are coming out of the systems. That helps us with the whole audit practice, right? To ensure that we can rely on what management is providing. So our IT group does a few procedures as it relates to ensuring that the general controls are intact and in place within an organization. And through that process, there were some observations that is worthy of what we deem to be a significant deficiency and wanted to bring that to your attention today. I'm going to hone in on the conditions so you fully can understand what was noted. And then again, we can go with any questions and continue with the presentation back. So essentially, during the fiscal year, our IT general control review of the point of sale, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, Bookham, and Amano systems, which serve as the authority's primary accounting and reservation systems. It was observed that the members of the IT and finance department had inappropriate access levels. The level of access allows them to override existing controls and perform a wide range of functions without independent oversight. During the audit, the authority submitted to the auditors third-party communication from their IBM consultant indicating no unauthorized transactions, manipulations of financial records, nor concealment of fraudulent activities were found after going through the audit logs of identified users with the inappropriate access. So essentially, at the end of it all, the main gist of it is we noted that the access levels were inappropriate for certain individuals. That did cause us to have a little bit of a red flag where we went through the process of asking, were those individuals able to manipulate and change anything since they had essentially the inappropriate access levels? And they were not, based on what the IBM consultant relayed to us. So there was no manipulation of data that was found. However, the access levels should not be at that level, which is why we've noted it to this significant deficiency level for your awareness and for management to ensure that they are correcting that. And within this finding, you will see, if we scroll down a little bit, the corrective action plan that has been put in play. And then again, management took this very seriously, and they recognized the importance of having this proper role segregation. And then this is their response to the finding of how they're going to review and an assessment, establish a corrective action plan, policies, training, awareness, and they have an implementation timeline to wrap this up by June 30th of 2025. Thank you, Madison. We can go back to our presentation. Perfect. So that was the internal control matter. One more item to kind of note is the next slide. In addition to us auditing the financial statements of the authority, we do audit what is the federal grants. There is one federal grant that was audited this year, the Federal Transit Cluster, for in particular, the formula grant that is received, and no reportable findings are noted there. That particular audit will be wrapped up this week and submitted to the clearinghouse as required within the allotted time. So wanted to bring that to your attention that there is a single audit that is completed and no reportable findings are noted there. This one. And final observations about the audit process overall. Significant issues discussed with management. Again, it was matters relating to the information technology observations. Disagreements with management. There were no disagreements with management whatsoever. Significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management during the audit. The exact opposite, actually. Full access to everything, and any question we had was promptly responded to. So it was really a smooth process. Consultations with other accountants. We are not aware of any consultations management had with any other accountants about accounting or auditing matters. And what that necessarily means is, should we have presented management with a certain conclusion and they were not keen with that conclusion and they went around sort of opinion shopping, we'd be required to let you know. So we were not aware of any that transpired. Significant matters that required consultation. We did not encounter any difficulty or contentious matters that required consultations outside of the engagement team. So in our way of our practice, should we have to encounter or run up the chain any sort of accounting matters to our national practice, we'd be required to inform you, and that did not transpire this year. And our last slide as we kind of close out is something we always include, which is the importance of independence. We have to follow both the AICPA and the GAO independence rules. So we outline here our responsibilities as it relates to that, such as maintaining a system of quality management. So we're able to overview our independence rules within our firm, which we do. And of course, the authority's responsibility. So should they have any sort of new affiliates or changes in the organizational structure, they are supposed to timely inform us so we can evaluate that properly. We do what we do best because we are ensuring that we are independent from management. That is the way that you can rely on this report. So this is why we take this very seriously and outline this in this particular slide. And within the overall package, just to let you know, we had significant written communications between management and our firm. So at the end of the audit, management provided us with a representation letter, kind of indicating a few matters relating to the overall process, which you will see here as Appendix A. And then Appendix B, as we alluded to earlier, is where we have identified the significant deficiency and the full impact of it through its written form. And that is it. Oh, one more item that we do include within the Appendix C. As you can imagine, this is a highly regulatory environment, as you all are aware. There's all sorts of pronouncements on the horizon, so we just wanted to keep you aware of this year we adopted 100 and 101. We have next year 102 that we need to ensure that we adopt. And then there's a few more GASBs on the horizon with 103 through 105. So wanted you guys to be aware as it relates to what the GASB's been up to and the requirements that will be needed in the future periods. And that is it. I don't know if we can stop sharing to see if there's any questions, but again, thank you again.
Are there any questions, Mr. Malkin?
Thank you. Valerie, thank you for that. Given your findings and your subsequent discussions with management and the conclusions that you drew, are there any actions that you feel would be needed, necessary, appropriate to be taken by the board?
Currently, I don't think there's anything that needs to be taken by the board. Management has an active corrective action plan in play. I mean, it will be fully done by June 30th. So I think the access controls will be remedied. So I don't think there is anything that the board needs to do.
Thank you, Valerie.
Any other questions from board members? I do have one question, I guess more about implementation post-audit, I guess for you, Mark. The first is, are you changing the way you're looking at grants receivable in terms of accounting estimates, given the uncertainty in terms of federal grants with other recipients? Are you making allowances now, or is that something the auditors would advise to do moving forward?
That was something that we discussed during the audit, and the funds that we have right now are formula funds, and the funds have been obligated. We've been on the phone with the Cape Cod RTA, who's been on with FTA. Right now, we don't see any issues. If it was to change or policy was changed, then we'd be making allowances accordingly. I think it's going to be an impact going forward for future funding. But right now, for the formula funding we have right now, feel confident with what we have. If it will change, I will report it to the board.
And just, I mean, if that's something within the purview of the auditors, is that what you would recommend the course of action at this time?
Absolutely. And within the actual financial report, we have a subsequent events note on this, that we acknowledge that there's been transitions in Washington post the year end, and that the organization is evaluating its effect. And currently, based on the grants that they do have, they don't rely or stay within the executive orders that were noted. So this is effective and perfect as it relates to what we noted. So again, we do acknowledge it within the subsequent events.
And then my second question is more one about implementation, about the internal control matter. Just who moving forward has responsibility for maintaining that IT security control and access?
That's Stephen Coleman. Stephen was the one who wrote up the corrective action plan. You know, I reviewed it and submitted it in, but we expect to get that done pretty quickly. He's already working on it, is my understanding.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If I may.
Valerie, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Madison.
I'd like to thank RSM
Thank you, Mark.
tirelessly. We appreciate it, the nights and the weekends they put in, as well as the accounting team. They did an excellent job this year hitting that March date.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And Mark was remiss in pointing out from the accounting team is Courtney Olivera, the assistant treasurer, Kelly Conrad, data analyst, and Chris Chase, the senior audit manager.
Thank you, all of you. All right, we can move back to the agenda stated to the general manager's report.
Sure. So just to make sure everyone knows who's in the room, besides myself, Mark Amundson, Mark Rosum, Terrence Keneally, Sean Driscoll, Courtney Olivera, Kelly Conrad, Chris Chase, Janice Kennefic, and Allison Fletcher. And from the public, we have Jim Swindler and Tom Innes. All right, first item is an update on the MV Aquinnah and MV Monomoy conversion projects. So I'll let Mark handle that.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So we have the Aquinnah and Monomoy conversion at Alabama Shipyard. Next slide, please. So the Aquinnah is awaiting, she has her final Coast Guard testing date today. The Coast Guard's been very challenged and with changes in their governance and availability of inspectors. We were supposed to finish yesterday. They have committed to finishing today. So our intention was to do our SSA sea trial today, and that's being put off till tomorrow. So the vessel is all set, it's ready for testing, and once we complete that aspect of the testing, we'll do the COI and then do our preparation heading north. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the bridge. She is complete and tested. Next slide, please. Picture of the superstructure. Next slide, please. The deck, all that is cleared off now and prepped for the sea trial. Next slide. So the incline stability test has been completed, which is the Coast Guard stability letters have been issued. So there's we did not get those, but these are similar and they've been issued. Sea trial originally when I wrote this was to be of yesterday, and now it's scheduled for tomorrow. And then post sea trials, we'll be doing the COI and then heading north. Next slide. We'll move on to the Monomoy. The Monomoy is on pier side. It's excuse me, on the hard. It's This is a picture of the slide. And this is a picture of the stern ramp from the underside, and that's all welded in place. They're getting preparatory for blasting. Next slide. All the bulwarks are now done and ready for blasting, final coatings. Next slide. Just another putting the cap rail on the stern area of the bulwarks. Next slide. This is a photo of the engine room door installation heading thruster room. Next slide. Now, this one area, and this is an important slide here, is during the blasting. What's indifferent from the Monomoy compared to the Aquinnah and the Barnstable and the Monomoy would dry dock stack, and the Monomoy was not, and that's why we split them away originally from that docking sequence. And in this area, we found some low gauging readings, and we're going to be doing some steel renewal. This is the first steel renewal that we've had to do on the hull, and this has affected the undocking date. The original undocking date was to align with another vessel to take this off on the 22nd of May. And now we have, because of this, we have to get the steel work done and get the shafts aligned for the new bearings that we're putting in as part of the scheduled dry docking. So we are now going to be coming off dry dock on the 15th of August. And so it will be accelerating other launching on the 15th of August. She'll be complete and ready to do her incline test and then heading north. But we're doing very well on the Monomoy. Next slide, please. So the milestones for the Monomoy, the bulwark prefab completed, sponsons and stern are installed, mid-body is complete. The vessel undocking now is the 15th of August, as I just conveyed. Stability test will be following on the 20th of August, and sea trials once we get the data back and we get the clearance from U.S. Coast Guard. So that is the schedule, and with the so right now we have payments to date of $65,740,929 for the 3 projects. We have $12,930,000 in outstanding commitments and a current estimate of $79,560,000. And with that, I'd take any questions.
Any questions from the board? No. Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. So next, to have an update on the Woods Hole Terminal project. This is a picture of the formwork that with the rebar in preparation for the pouring of concrete. It's in this particular picture. It's for the terrace area outside the footprint of the building. Next, this is install in this case HVAC elements that are being installed there, along with there's other wiring and conduit being pulled. Next. Last week they had to they trenched in front of slip 2 in order to connect a water main to the main line for both the utility building and the terminal building, and that was done in coordination with the Town of Falmouth Water Department. Next. This is some you get an aerial there of the terminal building and the perimeters. So they're doing the drainage on the along the outer edges of the building. Next. Again, a lot of conduit being installed, connecting the utility building to the terminal building. Started the waterproofing on the terminal building. Next. So thus far, we've spent about $3.9 million, including the design and remains about $21.6 million for this. We're about 38% done. This is last week, so we're probably closer to 40% done now, with thus far change orders of totaled 1.4%. So, and we've sent out 274 emails updating interested parties on the status of the construction. So.
Any questions from the board?
I'd like to go back just a second, question for Mark. When I was looking at the stern section of the Monomoy, the stern section is cantilevered, I don't know how many feet, but quite a bit. How is that filled in?
It's open, that's 1-inch steel. We didn't see any reason to close that off.
So that'll always be wide open there?
Yes, it will.
Hmm.
It's well above the water line, so that you will not have any impact on any sea condition that would even touch the underside, and it's blasted and coated, will be blasted and coated completely for protection.
Okay, unlike the sponsons where you have braces going, outwards and stuff,
Yes, the sponsons have 5. They're not covered either. So they're well above the water line. The base, it's 18 feet above the baseline of the keel, so it's very high above the water line.
Okay, thank you.
It's Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you. This, I think, is to Bob, but perhaps someone else. The concern that we all share with people in Woods Hole and people traveling back and forth during the construction going on in Woods Hole, in terms of traffic and pedestrians and congestion. At the start of each day, Bob, who is responsible for coordinating with the contractor and then putting out a plan for the day saying, here's what we're going to do with traffic today throughout this day? How does the management of the daily situation get handled?
Okay, so the contractor has daily safety meetings to start off the day. In terms of any need to be modifying the traffic pattern, the project manager for Colantonio works with the terminal manager or terminal agents on that, on when items will be arriving. We are working to develop a different plan in terms of where the pickup and drop off zone will be for customers being behind the temporary terminal building where the construction trailers are. So we're working on that, and also I think Allison is working on getting a golf cart to be able to transport customers from the temporary terminal building to once the weather, and I'm assured the weather will get better, we'll be looking at restriping to make some passageways more to delineate the passageways for customers to and from the slips to the temporary terminal building.
Thank you. It's clearly a concern in terms of public safety and confusion down there while this process is going on. So the more people who are aware of what we are telling our clients, the better off we are, particularly with a consistent message as the day goes on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I could follow up with Mr. Mellon's comments, I'm getting quite a few complaints about traffic congestion, especially during construction deliveries. And not only having an overall plan about trying to mitigate that, but have we considered hiring a police detail when we're having those deliveries happen? I mean, this is going kind of beyond what our normal traffic is.
So we haven't had any discussions. There are times where we do have the state police detail that's on site. And they can assist if need be to keep the traffic moving. Again, the goal here is to get to the point where we're not having those pieces of equipment arriving during the summer season. So that way we can accomplish that. I think they do have some structural steel that is actually started to be installed for the terminal building. And I know that they did bring in the stonework to start the process of applying the stonework to the utility building as well. So, but it's just a matter of coordinating it with Colantonio and our people on site as to how we best can keep that traffic moving.
I would just say, I mean, we need to accelerate those plans. I mean, it's almost Memorial Day.
Yep.
And then we need to communicate those plans to the people of Woods Hole and to the traveling public. And with that, I know we've talked offline, but I think it would be time to kind of schedule a listening session in Woods Hole about the status of the terminal and construction, that we do that before Memorial Day weekend. Any other questions from the board on this issue? All right, thank you.
Next item is just a real quick update on the RFR for the reservation system. As reported before, we had nine proposals received. The team has reviewed them independently and then collectively. And from those nine, they're scheduling demos from four of the nine proponents, and those will be taking place in the next couple of weeks, and anticipate having a recommendation at the May meeting for the reservation system. So.
Mr. Mulhern has a question. Yes, well, I'm involved in terms of the executive steering committee that the board established at the last meeting.
Right.
And the Port Council just appointed their members.
Right.
And so I was talking to Mark before the meeting that we need to schedule a meeting of the official executive steering committee now.
I was waiting for a report.
We had to wait for the Port Council to appoint, and now they've appointed, and then that was 2 weeks ago. Right?
No,
On the first of Port Council. Yes.
So it's myself as the chair, and then the two Port Council members on the steering committee are John Cahill and Eric DeWicki.
Okay, yeah.
And so my plan is that we schedule something before the end of April. And perhaps before then, and there's trying to coordinate with the open meeting law and procurement laws, at least having one of the executive steering committee members sit in on the demonstrations for the vendors. I think by default, it's probably going to be me. And Mark, did you have something?
So the demos will be starting, there's four of them, April 29th, 30th, May 1st and 2nd is the demo. And then after that, we'll be looking at the financials after we see the demos, and then making a recommendation at that point to the executive steering committee, which would then bring it to the board.
Once we pick somebody from the committee, are they taking over the project?
They'll be the vendor. We'll be working with the vendor.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
There's kind of three moving parts, I think, to the project. There's the actual software, most likely software as a service, and perhaps some hardware components that may be necessary to implement that software. And the vendor is really looking at what software will we be using for our reservation system. But at the same time, in order to maximize the use of that software, the new reservation system, we need to undergo kind of a business process, cultural change within the Steamship Authority itself to develop or codify our actual business rules and standard operating procedures so that we can fully use the software system we're obtaining, tell the vendor what we need it to do and what needs to be customized, as well as then be a data-driven transportation system. And it's that portion of, I think that's both the most exciting as well as the greatest challenge for the Steamship Authority. But it's that what internally managed what we need to work on. And then one of my questions will be later to Mark, and is that we definitely need outside vendor assistance in assisting us developing our business rules and standard operating procedures. And so that's kind of a separate contract. And there are different ways that we could go about procuring it. And in part, something that Gibis has assisted us to this date, or at least pointed out what we needed to do in terms of fully implementing that system.
So what we're doing is working on the governance.
In terms of the IT Executive Steering Committee, yeah, I mean, yes, making certain that we're actually developing, that management with the vendor is developing the necessary business rules and standard operating procedures so that we fully maximize the vendor that we select software for the reservation system.
And blending this all in, you know, to the website and the mobile app and things.
Yeah.
Sounds easy.
And if I may, and part of the review process is looking at our policies, was it because the policy still make sense today? Was it limited to the system or something we can improve based on the new system? And when they were put in place, it's perfect opportunity to say, does this policy still make sense in 2025 and beyond? So that's part of the process, as well as systematic improvements as well as procedural improvements.
Yeah, I would say it's an understatement to say that we're just procuring a reservation system. I mean, basically, we're procuring a reservation system to transform our operations and look at our business rules and processes. I mean, it's the goal and the hope should be that it's transformative, that we're a data-driven transportation system at that point.
Yeah, I can't envision picking up my iPhone and the iPhone says, you know, you've got all these things to plug in here. I mean,
it will be a brave new world.
Simple things like automating certain procedures right now that are manual. How do we gain efficiencies? How do we get information out quicker? How do we use the information to make better decisions going forward? This is really a comprehensive plan project.
So we got to refine all of those things before we go to press, right?
Yeah, we'll be you know, if there's any policy changes that will be coming to the board for approval on policy changes, we'll be having outreach meetings with communities about, does this make sense?
Yeah, and the software really that we're obtaining through this RFR is a tool to get there. It's just one step of, I mean, the project's much larger than that. And that's why I urge and the board voted to have this executive steering committee. And I know Mr. Malkin had a question.
Thank you. Question is Steve Coleman in the room?
No, he's not.
Okay. At the Port Council meeting, there was a good, solid discussion of the criteria that is being used by the authority to examine the components of the systems that are bidding to provide us with a reservation system. And I believe there were several hundred items that we're checking off against each proposal. And I was wondering if someone, perhaps Mark Rosum, could talk to that so that the board as well as our community will understand the depth and seriousness of the and appropriateness, I think, of the examination of these proposals we're receiving.
Sure, just give me 1 second here. So there was approximately, I just want to pull up my spreadsheet. On the procedural side, we had approximately 764 line items that we asked for information on from the vendors, and they were broken up into categories A through N. Were items that we were talking about what their training plan is, including their how are they going to solve problems? How are we going to vet the testing? You know, how do they do pricing? How do they handle like our special programs? What is their overall view of the organization? How are they going to handle foot traffic versus vehicle traffic, wait list, the commercial experience for our freight truckers? How are they going to integrate with the website that is yet to be launched? How do we have that integration? How do we get profile, for example, how do we get the customer's profile information into the system? What means have they done and what experience do they have? So it was very granular on the request that we had, that there was a lot of different working groups, whether it was the reservation department, the accounting department, the operations, the IT, of coming up with what criteria not only do we have now, but what do we want to look at in the future? You know, simple things like, you know, talking about the RFID cards for the customers who travel as the commuters. Then after that, then there's a whole section on the IT about network infrastructure, software updates. How does that all work? And I don't have that number in front of me, but it was several hundred. So we evaluated each proponent on these different categories. And there was 7 of us, I believe, that were in the evaluation committee. There was Allison Fletcher and from the operations team, Mark Munson, Angela Campbell from the reservations department, Stephen Coleman and James Ashley from the IT. I was on it, as well as Kelly Conrad from the accounting system. So we had different viewpoints and we went through it, and we all came to a conclusion that these 4 vendors that we're going to look at are going to be the who were the top notch. And they all the companies were very good companies, but these 4 we felt had the best needs for what we're looking to do going forward.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure that the rest of the board joins me in appreciating the depth and seriousness with which you're taking this look and evaluation. I appreciate it.
Now, these 4 vendors here, will they be integrating their software into ours? Or will we be developing new software to match and blend with them?
This is off-the-shelf software that they've already installed at other locations that we're going to be putting our data rules into, our business rules into it. So they're not building anything for us. They have these pre-existing.
Writing a full program.
We're not writing a program at all. There may be some small integrations, like how to.
I think Steve said that that's going to take at least 3 years to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referencing.
I think that's what he said at the last meeting.
It's premature to say when we're expecting to go, but you know, the big thing is like simple things like making sure, when do you cut this program over? What time of year? When do you end how do you transition from your existing reservations to your new reservations in a seamless way? How do you tie in your reservations that you're making in advance? You have the fast ferry, you have the point of sale. So you have a bunch of different things of making sure that you time this right to get it ready. So not only do you have the software, you have to make sure the network's ready to handle it, the hardware to scan tickets, but most importantly, the customers are ready to use it and our employees are trained and ready to use it. So you can have the best software in the world, but if people aren't trained and ready to use it, we're not going to succeed. So we got to make sure that we have a very robust training program to make sure when day 1 we launch, we're ready to go.
And Bob, just there's been talk too that one of the ways to beta test this in live is to first roll it out, since it's standalone reservations. It's kind of its own ecosystem, so that we could get people familiar with that. It could run parallel on the current website, that it wouldn't really seem different to the traveling public, but would give our employees the opportunity to work with it beforehand.
Well, Pete, I'm glad it's in your good hands.
Jim?
Yeah, I think to Mr. Jones's question or comment, and not the one about good hands, but the one prior to that, is it's fairly common practice in this kind of situation that when we buy off-the-shelf software, or anyone does, that about 80% of it is fine for what we need. And then about 20% needs some customizing work to get it to fit the nuances or the tweaks of a particular business. But with off-the-shelf stuff, we should be 80% of the way there with what they have. And then there'll be some time in making the rest of it fit into our system, or our system fit into it. Thank you.
And if I made a follow up on Jim's point, in that 20%, and then that we have to analyze, why are we not doing off the shelf? Or do we need this, or is this something we need to change?
Exactly right.
Any other questions from board members? I just have one more. In terms of project managing and moving forward, where are we on the component of having outside project management assistance with the implementation and the development of the standard operating procedures?
So right now we extended the Gibbous contract for additional 2 months to get us through the review and award of a contract. And we'll be putting together requests for proposals on management on a going forward basis.
We extended the contract, then we have the 2 months. We just signed an MOU agreement with Gibbous to start working on the deliverables for when we kick off with the vendor about policies, procedures on the allocations, the product details, preferred space when vehicles, and start codifying that and getting that as a deliverable for when we sign the contract, we can say, here's our playbook.
So just in terms of the executive steering committee, I think we should try to schedule a meeting in the next 2, if not 3 weeks, and mark that I see 2 agenda items. One is the request for proposals for the software system, and the second would be that issue about moving forward with project management and where we are and how we're going to procure it.
Okay.
No other questions from the board on this? We can move forward.
All right, so next, brief update about the Nantucket Terminal North Slip Fender.
Okay, good morning, everyone, again. So on April 5th, we had some damage to the number 3 approach dolphin in the North Slip in Nantucket. So what happened was the reaction block and the fender was impacted and got knocked off. We brought in a contractor to do an underwater survey of the pilings and below water level to the seabed. All is in good order. So we have the basis for doing a repair. Next slide. So this shows the position of the number 3 approach dolphin, and this is what we'll be going forward, repairing and reinstating the reaction block. We're going to reuse the fender we did in the dive survey. We took the fender off the block, and that's now shoreside. And so we'll be putting that on the new reaction block and reinstalling that over the next month. Next slide. So this is just some further pictures of the plan view of the terminal and the block. As you can see in the bottom, not quite the bottom, on the right-hand side, lower, you can see the pilings into the reaction block. Next slide. And again, this is a profile picture of the bottom center where you see all the pilings into the reaction block and the fender system. Next, so the timeline here for the specifications complete. We've sent it out to 3 companies. The tenders were received yesterday, which we'll be presenting for board approval today. And post approval, we're We're looking to mobilize in the next 7 days and estimate completion of the project by the 16th of May.
Any questions?
Obviously been fatigued over the years of storage.
No, the impact, what happened when the Eagle was turning, it contacted the reaction block and not the fender, and that was the failure. This reaction block and fender system in the pilings were installed in 2016. So this is something we have to look at carefully, but the good thing is the underwater structure is in good order, and it's a basis for rebuilding this. Otherwise, we would be in a different position today.
How deep will the pilings be, please?
No pilings. The reaction block will be built on top of the existing pilings as you see coming out of the water. There'll be no piling
Is
work.
it just gravity?
We'll be building a cement block over the top, and that'll be attached with rebar and that system once it's set up and dry. So, and then we'll put the fenders on last. Most of the work will be done actually shoreside prefabricated before bringing that out to installing on top of the pilings.
Questions from anyone else?
Yeah, is there a plan to inspect any other dolphins like this that are out there? In other words, do we think that something may have happened over the years that may have weakened it somehow, or is it possible that others may have this problem, if there is one?
Yeah, we have to do further inspections. The two approach dolphins are the ones of concern, because what happens is when we have vessels like the Eagle that'll come in and they're going to dock, they're going to turn around, and during that turnaround period is when we're looking at that contact with the reaction block. I mean, it's very difficult for the captains. You have different weather, different wind characteristics. Sometimes you get caught in a slightly different position than they want to be. That the fender system is to assist them in the turning around and also coming out of the slip. It's also to protect the reaction block from contact, because the fender system takes the inertia of the vessel and protects it. So we're going to take a relook at the two approach dolphins very closely, and we may even recommend changes to the fendering system, but we have to do some more engineering on that.
So it's common for vessels coming in and out to use the dolphins as sort of an assist or a guide into the slip.
Yes.
So it's not unusual for them to rub a dolphin, bump into it, depending on the weather conditions and so on.
Yeah, that's actually the design of it, and we use it and have been using that over the years as an assist, because there's time when we're operating in 30 plus knots wind, and depending on the wind direction, may have the vessel on top of the dolphins, and that's their function.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on Mr. Rainey's question, I guess, or comment, it seems to me that then I'm glad we're investigating the design, because if the Eagle made contact with the reaction block and not the fender, but I also, I really would like to see kind of what is our infrastructure inspection plan, so that we're aware of things before they fail and not so catastrophically. I think we're quite lucky. The angle that Mr. Rainey and I were discussing prior to the meeting, the angle that the dolphin fell, and that it fell away from the Eagle and not on the Eagle. Anyone else from the board? Or Mr. Malcolm?
Yeah, which is as a follow-up to the points that were made by Mr. Rainey, and as well as Mr. Adamson and Peter. I think the people, traveling public, needs to understand that in a marine environment, these dolphins are used as pivot points, and that boats have rub rails on them, and that coming into contact with these is exactly part of how you maneuver a ship into a limited space. So yes, it's important to look at the construction of them, but it is not at all unusual or inappropriate for a vessel to be using these as guides to enter and exit slips, particularly in weather. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I guess we can move.
Have an update on the Blue Line. Allison will.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. As you all know, that we have been operating Blue Line 7 days a week on the Vineyard route. This was due to the construction of Woods Hole and the now postponed construction in Vineyard Haven. To date, from January 4th to March 28th, the Blue Line was utilized a total of 838 times leaving the Vineyard. And from January 10th to April 1st, 443 times going from Woods Hole. It's been well received. We're still continuing to work on enhancing it with different implement items. We have, as of now, the callback feature set up. The terminals are all trained on it. We have not had the need to use it currently. But it's one of those situations, it's very similar to how Highness and Nantucket do their standby. They get put on the wait list. They leave. When they get a text to come back, that's when they would return to the property and get lined up. I think we're going to start seeing that be utilized once we get into May in the springtime and the volume starts to increase due to potential good weather. Right now, staff is recommending the authority continue with the reservation only days, 7 days a week for the Martha's Vineyard route through the June 17th, 2025 operating schedule. This will be due to construction, and then we can come back and reassess if we're going to continue with the program.
Or any modification you may want to make in terms of messaging and application of the program.
Yep.
Any questions before I seek a motion?
If I may, I should point out too that the 4 council members voted at their April 1st meeting to recommend the continuation of the Blue Line policy.
Mr. Malcolm?
Yeah, thank you. No, I think everyone has done a pretty good job in making this work. And the only item I'd suggest, Allison, is, and this may just simply be a communication device, is to say that we have a reservation only policy, but an excursion standby or something to make it clear to people on the island who may still be unfamiliar with the Blue Line that there's an island excursion line for them to access on a daily basis.
Yeah, Jim, on that point, we talked about essentially renaming the Blue Line, which I think is what you're referring to, and we opted not to for sake of it. At least was somewhat familiar to people. We can always reassess that. I would think we would want to do it probably after the summer season at this point, but we'll now that this is going to be extended potentially beyond the trial period, we'll reassess the entirety of the communications plan and see what else needs to be done. I mean, at this point, my recommendation would be to continue with Blue Line naming, but to continue to hammer home what it means and continue that re-education. program.
Thank you, Sean. I guess what I'm referring to is every hour on Martha's Vineyard Radio, they give a Steamship Authority report and say that the Steamship Authority's reservations only policy remains in effect. To folks who are on the island and really haven't understood what the Blue Line is or does, that doesn't encourage them to make use of this facility that we've made available.
And I can work with the radio and other partners on that.
Thank you.
And it's also, we have had numerous customers be confused with what Blue Line is. They think it's automatically going to get them onto the next boat.
Right.
So we have to continue to push out the education on the Blue Line, so people know that it's not a guarantee. Or people in the preferred or excursion programs.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is on the floor and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Or I'm sorry, roll call.
Jones, aye.
Randy, aye.
Tierney, aye.
Malcolm, aye.
Jeffrey, aye. It's unanimous. Thank you.
So next is the draft, a preliminary draft of the 2026 operating schedules, and I'll turn it over to Allison again.
So we are proposing the 2026 operating schedule. It will start January 5th of 2027. I'm not really used to looking out 3 years ahead. It gets a little confusing. This would start one day later and end one day later than the 2025 operating schedule for both routes. The Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket operating schedules will be essentially the same as 2025, with the exception of the assigned vessels and the start and end dates of the schedule. Right. We're going to start with the Vineyard route. So for the winter, it's going to start January 5th through March 29th. It starts one day later and end one day later than in 2025. The Martha's Vineyard route will be seeing the Island Home, the Martha's Vineyard, and the Aquinnah running on that schedule. When the Island Home has to go out for its repair period, the Nantucket and the Woods Hole will be stepping in at different periods of time. The next schedule will be the spring schedule. That's to start March 30th to May 13th. The vessels you'll see on the Vineyard route will be the Island Home, the Martha's. Late spring goes from May 14th to June 18th. We are running the Island Home, the Nantucket, the Aquinnah, and the Governor for that period of time. Then for the summer, we're going to continue with the 4-boat schedule for the Vineyard route, and it'll be the Island Home, the Martha's Vineyard, the Nantucket, and the Aquinnah. Late summer will be from September 11th to October 26th. We'll be using the Island Home, the Nantucket, the Aquinnah, and the Governor. What's that? 22nd, sorry. Yeah, I was already saying that. October 23rd to January 5th, 2027. And that will be the Island Home, the Martha's Vineyard, and the Aquinnah. It should be noted that in the late summer schedule, we are looking at potentially double crewing the Governor, which will be 3 round trips a day with an optional 4th. Now that we'll have the Monomoy or the Aquinnah running on the schedule, so hopefully that'll start taking up the slack on that. For the Nantucket route.
One thing also on the Vineyard route, in 2026, there may be some construction taking place in after berth on the mainland, but we've included it in the schedule because should that schedule change, our preference would to be berth that vessel on island.
So you'll see on the schedule that'll be on there as a 5:30 leaving Vineyard Haven, but it'll have asterisks next to it stating that depending on construction, it may be berthing in Woods Hole. So for the Nantucket route, for the back to my schedules. Winter schedule. We will be running the Nantucket in the Woods Hole. But when the Nantucket goes in for its repair period, when the Eagle goes in for its repair period together. Spring will be the Eagle, the Barnstable, and the Aquinnah operating. Late spring will be the Eagle, the Barnstable, and the Woods Hole. And you will also notice is gone. So I know Nat was pretty happy about that. For the summer schedule, we'll be running the Eagle, the Monomoy, and the Woods Hole. And then at one point, the Monomoy will be subbed out for the Barnstable. Late summer is the Eagle, Barnstable, and Woods Hole. And then in the fall, it'll be the Nantucket and the Woods Hole. For the INO, we are proposing the same trips that we always do, the 3 round trips in the 4 round trips in the spring, in the winter, and then the 5 in the summertime. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Looks good to me.
So we'll be posting these schedules in the newspapers starting on Friday for public comment. Point out, we continue to look at some of the, as Mr. Jeffries pointed out last month, we still look at some of the deck utilization. And as we get a clearer understanding as to the vehicle loads on the Barnstable, Aquinnah, and Monomoy, we may be looking to reduce some of that schedule. It'd be the same vessels, it'd just be a matter of how many trips that they may run.
That's why you see that reflected in the fall with the governor being double crewed. And the fact that we can comfortably run a 4-boat schedule in the summer as opposed to the 5-boat with the.
I'm sure I'll have questions post the section 15A hearings that I presume will be. From the board. All right. Next item.
Next item is just a quick update on the preseason sale that Mr. Lowell referenced in his report.
Good morning, everybody. Just an update on the preseason sale. As I said, we had our annual 2-week sale of electronic 10-ride ticket books for the high-speed service on the Nantucket route. As in years past, those books were sold at a 20% discount. This year, a total of 4,173 ticket books were sold during the sale. The total is down 7% from last year, but it's still above the 12-year average of sales for the program. I'll note those ticket books don't expire, so if someone buys a lot of them, they might not need to return for quite a while. The sale generated just over 1.1 million in revenue at a cost discount offering and a new high watermark this year. One customer bought 140 ticket books, which is far and above the high watermark set for a single account in the past. And no, I can't tell you who it was. But again, it always is a popular event with the customers, and I thank the board for their support each year on it. Thank you.
Just another thing to integrate into the reservation system. They used a book, they returned it. Ship didn't sail. Yeah, you get your hands.
I'll leave that to Mark.
And we had some of those questions in the RFR. We had those questions in our RFR.
Well, I'm just, I'm a big computer fan, but AI.
Anything else?
That does it for me at the moment, and I believe Mark has his.
Well, we'll move to the treasurer's report, business operations.
I'll be brief. I think we've had a lot of accounting today, enough for most people. So I'll go pretty succinctly here. All right, passengers carried for the month of February, both routes combined were down 6.8% and just over 8,200 passengers. with the Vineyard route being down and the Nantucket route being up. Year to date, we're down almost 1,800 passengers, or 0.7% combined for both routes. And again, these are all traffic stats or one-way traffic. Okay, so vehicles carried, passenger vehicles or vehicles under 20 feet. The Vineyard route was down 8%, or 2,127 vehicles. Nantucket was virtually flat, or up 18 vehicles, and combined both routes. And you can see the standard fares are still continuing that downward trend. But year to date, we're down 1.5%, or 941 passenger vehicles for both routes combined, primarily on the Vineyard route. Exclusively, okay. Freight vehicles for the month of February, both routes were good, down combined 5.5%, or 345 vehicles. Year to date, we're down 1.9%, or 244 vehicles. And again, most of the negatives are on the Vineyard route so far for the first 2 months. And granted, this is a very, very, very small sample set for the year. Cars parked for the month of February, both routes combined were down 12.6%, or 679 vehicles. Year to date, we're down 8%, or 890 vehicles. Both routes are pretty close for the year to date statistics. Trip summary report for the month of February. For the month of February, both routes combined, we had 7 trips canceled for mechanical, 97 for weather, 47 for traffic. That's trip consolidation, primarily on the freight boats when they weren't needed to run. Year to date, we have 11 trips canceled for mechanical, 116 for weather, and 115 for traffic. In the purple, we can see the percentages of this year, and down below it in green is what the percentages were for last year at this time. Financial snapshot for the month of February, operating revenue of $5,276,000 was down 523 versus budget. And that's related to the traffic statistics we just went over. Looking at the operating expenses, we were down 1.7 million, which totaled 10,856,000 for the year. Putting this together for the month of February, we have a net operating loss of 5,537,000, but that was below budget by 1.2 million. And that's really timing on the expense side, which we'll go over in a future slide. Year to date, we've accumulated a net operating loss of 10.5 million, which is $2.2 million below budget estimates. And that is mostly due to timing on the expense side. Was down $500,000, 523,000, and you can see the 3 major categories of automobile, passenger, and freight being down. Year to date, we're down 768,000, or 6.4%, with again those categories. And it should also be noted that the rent revenue this year is significantly down compared to last year, and that's the barging on Nantucket primarily. First budget estimates, okay. Operating expenses, the big standout here is the maintenance expense down 1.8 million, or 42% for the month of February. That's timing of the repair work on the Vineyard Haven slips, which will be done in the 4th quarter this year instead of the 1st quarter of this year. Year to date, those two are also driving that decrease. They account for 2.3 of the $2.7 million variance in the maintenance budget, which we'll realize later in this year. So that's really just a timing issue. Year to date, fuel's down $181,000, 14.2%. We budgeted 324 and we're at 268. And on a side note, with the turmoil right now, with the tariffs in the market, we are looking to possibly extend some more of our hedges for this year. When we are below budget compared to what we budgeted where hedges are better in 2026 than they were in the budget for 2025 at this point in time. So some good news on the next slide for passengers. For the month of March, as we saw some of the weather improve, we're up 3.7%, or 5,360 passengers. Both routes were up, and year to date, we're up just under 1%, or 0.9%, or just under 3,600 passengers. And for the vehicles, as much as everything was red in February, here we can see it's green as far as the traffic statistics. Just under 1,900 vehicles. And year to date, we're virtually flat compared to the previous year, 0.6%, or 682 vehicles. but we can still see the year-to-date that the standard fares are down compared to last year, but we saw March stabilize a little bit. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions from the board? I just have one request maybe moving forward. In reporting the operating revenues, especially with the automobile revenue, as we see the trend go standard fares, I think it would be helpful, at least for me, to see what the variance is in revenue that impact as we think about cost of service and fare setting.
So I have that. What I'll do is I'll put that in the more robust package and not for the presentation, just for time, if that works for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I guess we can move to procurement.
Yeah, so we have one item today, request for the members to authorize the general manager to award contract number 03-2025 emergency repairs to the Nantucket North Slip Approach Dolphin number 3 to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder, which was Coastal Marine Construction LLC, for a total contract price of $371,567.31. As previously reported, the MV Eagle had a collision with the number 3 approach Dolphin, and it dislodged the Fender system and the clump. This is to replace it. We did look at whether we wanted to do this repair, whether we want to remove the pipe piles, but because of the soil conditions behind in that area, we feel it's still necessary to have a Fender system in that place. So we sent out the specifications to 3 marine contractors. We see all 3 of them submitted a proposal by 4 o'clock yesterday. And again, we're seeking authorization to award the contract 03-2025 to the lowest eligible and responsible bidder, which is Coastal Marine Constructions LLC, for a total contract price of $371,567.31. And Coastal Marine is from Stoughton, Mass.
Is there been moved? Second. Any questions?
Let's get it done.
All right, roll call vote.
Jones, aye.
Randy, aye.
Tierney, aye. Falcon, aye.
Jeffrey, aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Old new business.
So the chair had asked that discussion about alternative energy be added to the agenda. So I don't know what.
Bob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, board. We've talked about alternative energy and the Steamship Authority now for multiple years. And I know that our former COO was to be looking into this for us, and apparently that did not progress. But I think given the current environment in DC, I think we have an opportunity to take some time and examine what the best options are for the Steamship Authority to look at alternative energy going forward. We had talked in the past about a Woods Hole style vessel as a hybrid. We had talked in the past of making one of the new freight boats into a hybrid. I think it had been the conclusion from the preliminary work that certainly on the Vineyard route, hybrid would be the only appropriate way to go given the number of trips and the length of the voyages. I think at this point, what I would like to suggest is that the authority engage a firm, whether it's Elliott Bay or another firm, and look at what options there are with our existing fleet or potential new vessels, to deal with the alternative energy issue in a way that's reliable as well as cost effective for the islands and the authority. I'd leave that to management to take it forward. I'd be happy to do anything I can to help, but I do think we have an opportunity now, given what I see anyway, as a pause in federal grants and or support for these kinds of things. We now have, at least a 2-year window to really look at what it is we should plan on doing and then marshal sufficient forces to accomplish that. So that's my little speech, and what I'd like to see is us starting to go through a process to come back to the board with, all right, what do we do about alternative energy for the Steamship Authority?
Okay, if I may respond. So we have had a couple number of discussions with Elliott Bay Design Group regarding services that they could provide for us. As you're aware, they've done similar studies for Washington State, British Columbia ferries, among others. So actually last night I got a proposal after talking about it and exchanging some information. So we're looking at a two-phased approach. Phase one would be to determine the emissions baseline and what the future standards would be and what current emissions are. I guess in that case, the Massachusetts 2050 goal requires a 1990 baseline data to be accumulated. That'd be part of this. We'd be looking at what vessels we had at the time, the propulsion systems on those vessels. 1990, everything was at that point considered tier 0. So, and we'll be looking at, in terms of even a bus fleet and the like. So we'll be going ahead with that proposal from Elliott Bay. And then the next step after that would then be to determine a path forward to be able to meet the goals, whether, along the line and what's going to be required there. And yes, we would be looking at potentially during a midlife for the island home, which would be coming up in probably another 5 or so years, of whether there's an opportunity there to go to some sort of hybrid system on that vessel, whether it's the MV Woods Hole as well, or one of these, the new OSVs. But first off, we need to establish where we're at, which was something that it had been started, but then got put in the back burner. So we want to have Elliott Bay go through that process with us and working with our people here on developing that and being able to establish what the, what we need to be doing to going forward. And so the timeline here that it's all going to be dependent upon how quickly we can get some of this information to them on the schedules and the vessels and the propulsion equipment that we had back in 1990. So, but knowing them, they'll work rather quickly on this.
I think Elliott Bay has already given us, a good definition of what to expect. And I'm definitely pro to clean up the atmosphere and things like that. But I also, it's going to have to follow the money, because some of these things are unbelievably expensive. And right now, he said, it seemed to me that the figure we paid, a little under 40 million for the Woods Hole, and today to duplicate that, that's before all the stuff we're getting on right now currently with steel and things like that, is going to cost somebody around 75 million.
Correct.
And, I mean, we're facing, a dollar figure here that is, we gotta look at our wages are going up, and when I read, the review of what's coming up, with the agreements and things of this nature, we're spending an awful lot of money right now to keep abreast. It'll question, whether we can continue to sustain this as a fare box only.
So,
And incorporating all of that with just normal operating costs, which have to come first.
so along those lines and along the lines of Mr. Malcolm's comments that, yes, any applications for any grants that it's for the energy, those are going to take a lower priority with this administration than the previous administration. But not to say that we continue to try. We've a number of grant opportunities that we've either applied for or will be applying for, provided they actually end up putting out the NOFO on those. Notice of funding opportunity for is a NOFO. So as part of that, we did apply for the FTA low and no emissions grant program. We weren't successful there. The FTA passenger ferry grant program, we had put in some requests in 2023 as well as 2024 and weren't successful. DARA grants with the EPA as well. So, we continue to pursue those with the hopes that we're able to, because this will be a heavy lift for us. But one thing I did want to show, just kind of, to set the stage here, is in terms of the alternative energy. Next slide. So this was the National Census of Ferry Operators data back in 2017. And it showed that 88% of the vessels that the operators that report to this the census each year, every other year, excuse me, that 88% of them were diesel or and going down. And you'll see that there was only 4 ferries back in 2017 that were electric. And in the next slide, this is the 2022 data. You'll see that the diesel went down, but that's because they broke that out into biodiesel as well as diesel electric propulsion. But it still only remains 4 ferries out of the ones that are reporting to the National Census of Ferry Operators are electric. Now there are a number of them that I know are online that will be coming out shortly, or may have already come out since this data was reported. But in terms of it, it's impacting the entire industry on what we go forward on going forward, and there may be some intermediate steps that we may be taking. We're looking at. I don't think it's on there. Well, some of the things that we have been doing is converting our bus fleet to electric or hybrid. The solar project at TBL. Was delayed because of the wealth had required and to be signed off on as to how the electric companies were going to be integrating these projects into the grid. That has been done. Suppliers, the Eversources, the Next Grid, they have a 2-year window in order to come up with funding to build out the grid. So that project at Thomas B. Landis at this point looks like it's going to be delayed for yet another up to 2 years here. So we've still want to move forward with it. We indicated that we'd be bringing it up here at today's meeting, just to this is something that we feel is would be very productive for the Steamship Authority as well as the community at whole to continue go forward with this, and I hope the board feels the same way on that. So and then I don't know whether I had anything. This is just the breakout of this, of the phases that we need to do for it, and I think that's it. Steps that we are looking into, whether it's, there's a renewable diesel that hasn't been widely available on the East Coast. We understand that there is some inroads that are being made and getting that, and we're looking into that, and also confirming with our engine manufacturers that, you know, what the performance levels of using that renewable diesel would be on the engines, but there is a cost to that, and you know, at this point we don't have a firm cost, but to be switching to this renewable diesel, there would be an upcharge that we would have to that we'd come back to the board to discuss.
I remember the John Waterhouse and stuff, and one of the things he said, he was talking about the infrastructure. He said it was gonna cost something like $10 million for, I don't know what he was defining at, modules or whatever, maybe you can fill in the blanks. But $10 million struck me. Because if we've got to not only electrify the vessels, I mean, we've got to have shore power too. They can run, you know, I guess as a hybrid and things like that, but there's so much more into it, you know. I can see billion-dollar figures to do this.
Yeah, so what that initial study had shown is that there's not enough power in the grid to be able to supply the vessels on an on-demand basis. There isn't enough on the islands, and in Woods Hole, we'd be effectively browning out the village if we were to do it that way. So what they would be indicating is that we may have to go to some sort of trickle charge, where we would have a battery system on shore, which would charge, and then once the vessel came into port, it'd be rapidly discharged. We would be needing to do, and yes, I think it, you know, it's $10 to $12 million at that time, and that was 3 years ago. So, and again, the battery technology has been changing rapidly, and you know, some of the players that were in place 3 years ago are not in place anymore. They've left the industry. So there'll be further clarity on a direction that we can do as we go forward. So.
Well, a representative from the grid said that the grid would be up to speed in 2 years. And that's 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, again, we can't even take the solar energy that we could generate at Thomas B. Landers and put that into the grid at the moment.
Right.
So, and that's essentially what it would take to have the MV Woods Hole fully electric.
Right.
I guess I would just add, though, that while those are obstacles for implementation, none of it stops us from creating a formal plan and what we need to get that done. And I think that, you know, if you look to our strategic plan that we approved and haven't talked about for quite some time, that's strategic outcome initiative number 1, is enhancing, maintaining, and greening our infrastructure and assets. And so this and set forth what are the obstacles and what resources we need to obtain that, to meet those goals.
And that's why I, you know, reached out to Elliott Bay and to get their expertise on this as well. So. John Waterhouse has retired, yes. But they have very capable team.
A good friend to have.
Yes.
Anyone else on this issue? Jim, any final thoughts since this was your agenda item?
No, I appreciate the discussion, and I also am very aware and sympathetic to the huge sums of money that will be involved. And the fact that, you know, I don't think anybody's going to be throwing that money at us, at least for the next 2 years, certainly. But I do think it's important that the Steamship Authority gets a good solid look at what the landscape is, what our options are, and then make decisions upon in which direction do we want to go. And have a plan going forward. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Any other old or new business from the board? Oh, sorry, Tom.
I do have one thing from a staff perspective. So the 2025 operating schedule called for the MV INO to be triple crewed starting in the middle of May. And at this point, we're going to continue with it being double crewed until the middle of June, and we'll reevaluate it by the time the May meeting comes along.
Before we skip ahead on the alternative energy situation, so going back to Bob's comment about the TBL parking lot. I think we need a sense of, you know, the board's commitment and commit to that project and get that direction, because the vendor's been asking, you know, again, through no fault of their own. I think it's the regulatory process has just been holding them up, and the utilities review has been holding it up. And they're looking to see if we're still committed to them and developing that project. So it's just a matter of getting that on the record if that's the direction we're going, so that we can give them the feedback.
Because they need to submit a sizable deposit to Eversource to get their spot in line.
Correct.
So you're looking for a motion?
Board needs more information, but I think, you know, essentially the project hasn't changed. It's just been kind of in hiatus and standby while things beyond our control and the control of the vendor to develop the project. We've just been sitting waiting for the regulatory process and the utility review to go through. And so that's what they're looking for before they commit resources to it.
So the board affirm its previous decision to continue with this project?
Yes, sir. That is exactly what it would be.
Is there a motion?
I will make that motion.
Repeat it.
It is the motion is to affirm the board's previous decision to continue the solar project at Thomas B. Landers Park.
To do what?
We're affirming our previous decision to move forward with the Thomas B. Landers solar project.
Oh, absolutely. My hearing here, it's
Yeah,
not,
that's it.
and neither do these, they're just on.
We're really affirming our previous decision, saying it's still good for the vendor's good faith and trustworthy.
Absolutely.
All right. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
John's on.
Randy, I.
Kearney, I.
Malcolm, I.
Jeffrey, aye. It is unanimous. All right. Any other? Seeing none, we will open it up for public comment.
Jason.
Yeah, hi everyone, Jason Graziadei, Nantucket Current. Going back to the item on the agenda regarding the Fender, can you tell us how much this incident in terms of the retrieval of the Dolphin, the inspection and the rebuilding of it, how much that costs, what the budget item is for that? And also, when was the last time that Dolphin was inspected?
Okay, to date, we have 32,000, and that's invested into the dive inspection of the pilings and not the removal of the reaction block and the fender, where this is ongoing right now. And in regards to the other part of the question, in the damage, we're still looking at all of our film and closed circuit TV. That this may have been a cumulative or a single event which damaged the concrete in the reaction block. It's because other than fasteners and chains on the fenders, that's a limitation. So we, again, as I talked about earlier, we got to look at the Fender redesign and take a fresh overview and slip, as they are very exposed. We don't have the same situation in the opposite slip.
Thank you. And I just, with reference to the contracts that were mentioned earlier that are going to be signed for the rebuilding of it, how much is the one that's going to be signed today?
The contract that was approved by the board today was $371,567.31.
Thank you.
Kate,
I want to thank Jim and the board for discussing the alternative energy plan. I believe that the words alternative propulsion should be added to that to be sure that you're not just looking at fuels, but other ways to move the boats forward. And I understand Bob Jones's concern about the costs. I think it's hard to think about the relative short-term cost to the Steamship Authority versus the long-term and increasing impact of climate change on our planet as well as on the continuation of our species. So even though it's very difficult to think about this, it does need to be addressed. And I applaud the fact that the new report will address how you're going to meet that 80% reduction that the state 2050 decarbonization plan calls for. In terms of the electricity supply on the vineyard, as you know or may know, there's a replacement cable going into West Chop and a new cable going into East Chop, both done in the spring of 2026. And I think it's worth Elliott Bay or someone from the steamship establishing a good connection with Eversource to understand how the setup of batteries in the port would impact that, what they consider to be a good amount of increased supply to the vineyard, how your needs might fold into that. And if you don't know who to contact, I can certainly tell you. That issue is totally separate from the solar array problems you're having. That's the same issue that's happening also to some large arrays on the vineyard. That has to do with upgrading the substation in Falmouth to allow for more contribution of renewable energy sources back onto the grid. So that's a totally different situation. And again, everybody is waiting, and it's a long process for them to upgrade that substation. It was delayed for 2 years because the Department of Public Utilities took 2 years to decide about it. So I applaud your moving forward with this plan. I applaud both Jim and Peter Jeffries saying that a formal plan needs to be created. And I urge you to have Elliott Bay be less conservative than they were last time. Last time they considered some alternatives that were really insignificant, like providing electric power only when the boats are in the berth. That did not make a significant change. You really need to look at plug-in hybrids, maybe some alternative fuels is another option, but Elliott Bay needs to would be great to get the benefit of the work that Elliott Bay has done for Washington State when thinking about our system, so that they're less conservative and more thoughtful in their overall approach in order to meet that state goal.
thank you. And Amy Cody.
Thank you. I'm Amy Cody from Chilmark. I'm a member of the Steamship Authority Citizens Action Group, and I have several questions all related to the search for a new general manager. As many would agree, the search for a new general manager is at the top of the list of the most important issues faced by the Steamship Authority. My first question is directed to Bob Davis. The board voted at their March 21 meeting to approve the hiring of FastStream as the search firm consultant for the position. At the April 1 Port Council meeting, when asked about the contract with FastStream, Mr. Davis replied that someone who needed to sign/approve the contract was on vacation, and therefore it hadn't been signed yet. He didn't say whether it was someone from the Steamship Authority or Fast Stream. My questions are, is the contract now signed? And if not, when will it be signed? And after it is signed, will there be monthly updates to the board regarding the search process from Mr. Davis and the search committee?
Okay, so first off, the individual that needed to sign the contract was on the Fast Stream side. I was authorized by the board to sign the contract, so we're waiting on them. The contract has been signed, and there'll be there's already been discussions about a meeting of the general manager search committee to discuss next steps. But at this point, the contract has been awarded and signed.
So my question also, though, is will there be monthly updates to the board regarding the search process from Mr. Dave, from you and the search committee?
I believe that'll be something that'll be discussed at the upcoming search committee, and whether it'll be a member of the search committee providing updates or whether it'll be myself. That'll be determined then.
Okay, my next question is for the board. I sent an email to all board members over the weekend reiterating the importance of adding a public member to the new general manager search committee. The recent Edgartown school search for a new principal had 22 people on it, representing all important constituencies in the matter. At your March board meeting, you decided to table the discussion on this matter. However, I'm surprised that the issue wasn't on the agenda for this board meeting for a discussion and a vote. And I'm wondering if someone can explain what this board means by tabling this issue and when it will be on the agenda for discussion and vote.
I believe the subject itself was
So
tabled.
I wanted actually someone from the board to answer that question. Thank you. Okay, I see that Jim is shaking his head no. So does that mean that no one's going to answer that question from the board?
Jim was shaking his head no, does not have anything to do with the answer from the board. I would speak for myself as a member of the board that the discussion was had at the board, a vote was taken by the board, and the vote was to table the discussion. The discussion is tabled.
So my question is, when this board tables a discussion, does that mean that you are waiting to discuss it and you will put it back on an agenda in the future?
I believe any of the parliamentarians present would tell you that it's at least my understanding that when a vote has been made to table something, it is tabled and no further action will be taken. Is that correct, Mr. Keneally?
I would agree with that, Jim, yes.
Amy, did you have any further questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
And Margaret?
Yeah. Margaret Hanneman. Thank you. Towards the end of the March 21st board meeting, the previous one, Bob Davis introduced a motion for the approval of $75,000 to Raftillis to extend their contract that was ending that month, he said, for continuing work with the strategic plan created in mid-2023. Briefly, Peter Jeffries stated that he could not vote for this expenditure without an update from Raftillis and the steamship folks working with them as to what had been done to date. I would just note that there would appear to have been a great lack of oversight of this whole, I believe it was upwards of $270,000 project. If we come to the end, but have not yet ensured that updates and changes would have been happened as required. We should not have to be paying an additional $75,000 for what should have been done under the original contract. Not appropriate. Contract costs and dates aside, when can the public expect to hear a report of what has been done and what has changed as a result of the strategic plan?
Okay, so in terms of the strategic plan, we have been providing, may not be quarterly, maybe every 4 months, that we have provided some updates. At this point, we're trying to coordinate with the May meeting to have a strategic plan. It was scheduled for the March meeting, but because of the moving of the meeting date, Raf Tillis was not able to attend. So we're working on their availability for the May meeting.
Okay, so it will be the May meeting. Just very briefly, I had a few longer comments, but there are some things that I think the steamship should be looking at including in a strategic plan concerning, as we know, the islands and the Cape have an increasing lack of reasonably priced housing, making in particular worker housing almost non-existent for a large portion of the essential workers, including patient-facing hospital professionals, schools, teachers, plumbers, electricians, all needing to commute to our islands. I'm assuming that Nantucket has this same issue. Looking at the early morning and the returning late afternoon, you understand how much of our economy is dependent on these folks being able to easily commute. And so again, just briefly, I think the steamship needs to be looking at, do they need to provide alternate additional to ensure that we will be able to continue meeting the needs of commuters who frequently can't take a longboat ride. And you might note that there was a good article in the MV Times this week highlighting the services of the Patriot boat, which does reliably address commuters that are out of the time frame of the steamship boats. So you could take a look at that. Thank you. No questions there.
Okay. And Beth O'Connor.
Hi, mine is more of a request of you all. Edgartown, Martha's Vineyard. So I'm trying to patch together, the major spend initiatives of the last 5 years, from vessel to brick and mortar to now going into this IT. And what's really hard to piece together as I go through it is the initial authorization of spend. I'm an accountant, by the way, as well as the all the change orders piling up on top of those. And my request is this: as we start with the next initiative, which is the IT replacement project, I'm just wondering if we could, as far as the public is concerned, take a more informative approach of always addressing when additional change orders are brought forth. Could we always have the history of the initial spend, the initial approval, the spend to date, as well as the incremental change orders? There's a reason for change orders, but when I go back through some of the numbers and the contingency amounts and everything that is being held to some of these projects, and doing huge project work myself, obviously you're going to have to build some reasonable estimate for this project well beyond what you're given in those RFPs. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that a lot better than, for me to piece together the vessel spend it's like a full-time job. So I think the public should be a little bit, could be a little more informed in words that are in an organized way that make a lot more sense. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Okay, that would be super
And I'll
helpful.
just address, in terms of the reservation system, I think that was the consensus of the board and why I brought it to the board to have the IT Executive Steering Committee,
Yeah.
which will have open meetings and be meeting in public and have an opportunity for public comment and to drill down in greater detail than we do during the board meeting, specifically on those contracts and those issues as it pertains to the reservation system and its procurement.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, that's all I have.
One more. Sorry.
Leon. Oh. Leon.
Hi, Leon Brathwaite. Hi. I find it somewhat troubling that people are asking the board to do stuff that their appointed individuals representing them already are doing. If I have an issue with the Steamship board, I call Jim. Jim, can you talk to me about this or that? I think for the community to think that they need to be micromanaging the board is not appropriate. We've already appointed the individuals to represent all the towns involved in the Steamship organization to the board. So having redundant questions about questioning expenses and budgets, that's all being handled internally appropriately by the board that's been appointed and is operating. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Now we're done.
All right. I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss and approve the minutes of the authority's meeting in executive session on March 21st, 2025, and to review the authority's strategies with respect to collective bargaining negotiations because a public discussion of these matters may have a detrimental effect on the authority's negotiating and bargaining positions. These matters include anticipated and ongoing negotiations with Teamsters Union Local 59 and MEBA's District Number 1 PCD, and discussion with respect to a tentative collective bargaining agreement with Teamster Union Local Number 59 employment for the authority's licensed deck officers. The public disclosures of any more information with respect to these matters would compromise the purposes for which the executive session is being called. After the conclusion of the executive session, the board will not reconvene in public. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And would one of you two like to second the motion?
I'll second
All
my
right.
motion.
All right.
Second my motion.
All right. I'll let Terrence figure out who made it and seconded it.
I did both.
I don't want to call favorites. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Jones, aye.
Randy, I.
Tierney, aye.
Nothing, aye.
Jeffrey, aye. This public session is concluded and we will reconvene in executive session in 10 minutes.
Yeah. While we're in, Jim, if you want to sign out and back into the same Zoom in 10 minutes.
Okay, so 12:24, thank you.
Thank you.